Welcome to Fresh Perspectives, a panel about community, climate, and technology. This session is credited for 1.5 HSW, so we need to get cracking. And before we get moving, I'd like to, it's not moving, okay. Welcome our sponsor. Would you like to say a few brief words?
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Jaime Bermea. I'm the president of Digital Drafting Systems. We are a value-added reseller of Autodesk products and Bluebeam products. I'm sure you're familiar with both of those brands out of Miami. And our mission basically is to help companies like yours with technology and implementing technology, training on their products, and for that I have our Director of Services here, Leo Bocardi, to say a couple words. Welcome again to the AIA Florida Convention.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. What we have on certain tables is a flyer here where we actually were very passionate about the themes of this panel. Because these are themes that we help firms like yours tackle on an everyday basis. So what we did is, inside here, there's a sheet that kind of gives you an overview of how we help firms like yours tackle climate, community, and technology. So we'll keep it short. We're here today and tomorrow. Tomorrow we have a table. Please take one of these. If you don't have them, just flag me. I will give you one, and come see us tomorrow and enjoy this great session.
Thank you. Really appreciate our sponsors and enabling to do what we do here. Okay, so I'm going to go quickly past the legal stuff. I want to tell you about the Young Architects Forum very, very briefly, and that is who is bringing you this session today. The Young Architects Forum is a national committee of the AIA. It is a member group representing anyone who has been licensed 10 years or less. That is licensed architects who have been licensed 10 years or less. It doesn't matter if you're young or if you don't identify as young, that's okay. Some of us have gray hair, and that's fine. We were actually initially founded by the College of Fellows. We represent 12% of total AIA membership. Young architects actually, recently licensed members, so very recently licensed members represent 12%. Young architects within that 10-year mark actually represent 20% of the AIA membership at large, so that's a sizable chunk of people. Anyone who is a young architect could be just thinking about, hey, I got licensed, now what do I do next? Or they could be thinking about starting their own practice, and they're looking at that mid-career to later career kind of threshold. This year is the 33rd anniversary of the Young Architects Forum. Here's some connection points that you can have for us. We have a publication called Connection on Issue quarterly. We've just published the second one for the year, and we're working on our third. We do have a presence on different social media. You can check us out on Twitter and Instagram, on Facebook. We're also on LinkedIn, and we are on the AIA Community Hub. My name is Arlenne Gill. I am actually the Knowledge Director for the Advisory Committee for the Young Architects Forum. I have with me a panel of lovely young architects from all over the country, and we will introduce them shortly. Our agenda for today, don't worry, we'll get caught up on time. But we will be discussing our three topics. We will have a fun activity, and then we will end with a town hall. So if you have questions throughout the presentation, please hold them. We'd be happy to answer them. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce our lovely panelists. So hi, I'm me. I just said who I was again. I'm actually a principal at DLR Group based out of Orlando, Florida. I formerly represented AI Florida on the Young Architects Forum prior to my current role. I have been active within the AIA for the past dozen or so years, and you may or may not have seen me around, but here I am. If you have questions, we can chat later. I have with me Amanda Barton, wave. So Amanda is a vice president at HKS Architects based out of Miami. She's a former AIA Miami president. Amanda was recently named an ENR Texas and Southeast 2025 Top Young Professional. And is also an active member of both AIA Miami and SoFlo NOMA. Amanda strives to enhance communities by meeting challenges in unique design. Part of her work was actually helping co-author sorry, I lost my face in the print. She is a strong advocate for sustainable design, sitting on the Miami and AIA Florida Resilience and Adaptation Committees, participating in multiple LEAD and WELL projects, and promoting environmental resilience. Amanda participates across multiple HKS initiatives to help push boundaries of ESG, as well as an internal research team focused on resilience, and is one of the authors of the Resilience Design Toolkit for AIA. We also have Gabriella Bermea. Gabby is a recipient of the AIA National Young Architect Award, has formerly served on the Young Architects Forum Advisory Committee as Communications Director. She's a Senior Associate and Architect with Perkins Eastman. Gabriella specializes in educational and inclusive design, community building, and stakeholder engagement. Her work spans across architecture, philanthropy, and advocacy, focusing on K-12 partnerships. Gabriella is known for her ability to build strong client relationships and empower teams to reach their full potential. She currently serves on the Executive Board of Directors for the Texas Society of Architects as Vice President of Practice and Recognition. Has also authored several articles for AIA Architect, Texas Architect Magazine, and AIA Young Architects Forum Connection. And then we also have Mel Ngami, who's an architect with Smith Group. Melanie is currently the Young Architect Representative for AIA Pennsylvania on the Young Architects Forum. In her practice at Smith Group, she focuses on science and technology. She's spoken multiple times at both AIA National and NOMA National conferences in conjunction with the Large Firm Roundtable and the Small Firm Exchange about the impacts of technology in our profession, including how to leverage artificial intelligence and developing tools for streamlined project management techniques. Mel has also, attuned to the psychological and physical qualities of architecture. Mel understands architecture as an act of storytelling that engages people, place, and past as it anticipates the future. And Mel is a former adjunct professor of architecture at both Carnegie Mellon University and the University of Pittsburgh. If you are just joining us, we encourage you to sit up with some friends. We want at least 5 people to a table, and there should be some active components in front of you that you should not be peeking at just yet. I'm not going to go through this. Hopefully you read it. Here's our course objectives. They're very important. And with that, we will go into our activity. Like I said, please make sure you're at a table with little notebooks. No? Use the podium. Okay, all right.
Using the technology that's here. So we're going to do a quick mini activity. This is going to be a bit of an icebreaker, but also to kind of grease your wheels a little bit. So first things first, if you're sitting at a table, like Arlenne has said, that doesn't have a book, move to a table with a book. And second thing, I'm going to let you look at the books, but not just yet. I'm going to explain the activity first. So the activity is, in every one of your books, there's going to be a word. Make sure you look at the front, because if you're looking at the back, you're not going to see the word. And you're going to, in your own interpretation on the next page, draw that word. And then you're going to pass it to the person to your left and have them write what they think you drew. And you're going to keep doing that until you get to the end of your table and your book gets back to you. So that's what you're going to do, right? So this is going to be an exercise in communication. I know as architects, we're always communicating, but how well do you think you actually communicate? As we're going to talk about community, and we're going to talk about how do you actually connect with the people around you. So everyone look at your book. You're now allowed to look at your book and see the word. Don't draw on the page that the word is on. Draw on the next page. Because then if they see the word, they're going to write the word. I see a couple of y'all.
Don't show your word to this.
Don't show your word to anyone either, because that's cheating.
Now, how long do we have?
You've got 60 minutes per drawing. So I'm giving you 60 seconds, not minutes. Seconds, not minutes. I'm not doing that to y'all. Seconds. Arlenne's got our timer. So I'm going to tell you to switch when 60 seconds hits. Go. Go, go, go.
Draw, draw, draw.
Draw. No time to be an artist. Just get the idea down. We're hitting 30 seconds. Move those pencils, move those pencils. Don't try to be an artist, just get it done. We all know at architectural buildings, a beautiful building means nothing if it's incomplete. 45 seconds have gone. All right, we're at the end of our minute. Move your book over and give it to the person next to you. If you didn't finish your drawing, sucks. Give it to the person next to you, and the person that takes it, on the next page, write what you think that drawing is telling you. Go in the same direction, it's fine. On the next page, write what you think the drawing is describing. On the next page, so that they can't see the drawing. You shouldn't be able to see the drawing and the word. On the next page, you should not be able to see the drawing when you flip the page. Write the word that you think that image is representing.
On the following
Next page. You shouldn't be able to see the image.
On the
and you
following
want to
page.
describe what that image is relaying. On the next page where you can't see the image, so that the next person can try to interpret it. It's like telestrations. Anyone play that game? All right, guys, time is up, time is up. So if you've written the word, pass it on to the next person, and the next person has to draw what that word you wrote was. On the next page, draw the word that the person is giving to you. We'll keep going until they get to the end of the table. It got real quiet. People are paying attention. People are concentrating, using that mental faculty, lubricating the brain. All right, time to stop drawing has come. So now pass the book along, and the next page, whoever gets the book is going to write a word. If you're in a smaller table and you have gotten your book back, then you're done. But if you're in a larger table, we're gonna keep going. You're gonna basically keep doing this where you write the word, draw the word, write the word, draw the word until you get your book back. Yep, you're writing a new word based on the image that you have received. Communication, guys. We can do this. If you've received a word, then you're drawing an image. And if you've received an image and you're writing a word. All right, guys, you've had enough time to draw or write the word. I forgot which word we're on. But now pass it along. And if you're receiving a drawing, write a word. And if you're receiving a word, draw a drawing. It is time to pass it along. Keep going until you get your book back. Yes. Because you'll get your first word back. That's true, that's true. That's true.
Means
How many
we
rounds
need
have
to
you
work
gotten?
on communication.
How many rounds have you gotten? Okay, you should have your book back by now if you're a 5-person table. All right, for the sake of time, and since I see some of these tables are really massive, this is the last round, okay? So I'm changing the rule a little bit. This is gonna be the last round. Everyone, look at the image or word that is at the end of your book, and then see if it matches what you ended up with. And that will be a measure of how well your communication is. And then for the next, for the next 5 minutes, discuss among yourselves what went wrong. I know, I'm sorry. All right, guys, I'm gonna pull you back to the front. Show of hands, how many people ended where they started? Show of hands, did anyone end where they started? Okay, we got a good communicator over there. We got good communication over here. Anyone else? Did you end where you started? We got another guy over there. So, pulling everyone back, come back. Return to center, humans. Return here.
Hey everyone,
Hey,
welcome back to the panel.
up front. So, I just want to explain this activity a little bit now that you've done it. Why did I make you go through this? There are one of two reasons. So, pulling you guys up front, back again. So, the reason I made you guys do this activity is one of two reasons. One, so you can actually talk to your neighbor, because how often do you actually talk to your neighbor when you sit in these tables? So that's the first reason. But the second reason is to acknowledge that a lot of times you think you're communicating, or you have a line of communication, but it doesn't always come around. And as we're going to go through these sessions today, you're going to learn about ways of communicating for a community, but you're also going to learn about how you can communicate the design and the work that you're doing in a better way, in a better fashion. So you don't necessarily need to take this as a life lesson. This is just a fun activity to do to like grease your wheels a little bit and see how well do you actually communicate and like test the line. But we hope you had a little bit of fun. We hope you chatted with your neighbor, you met someone new, and I'll pass it over to Arlenne, continue the conversation. Actually, Gabby. Might do.
Oh, is it gonna go? Nice, okay. Hey y'all, how's it going? Can you hear me all right? Yes, okay. So my visual communicators, visual learners, how was that experience working with someone who didn't get what your sketch was? Okay, imagine working with a community who has no idea what a plan is, or a section is, or even really what a rendering is and what its timeline means. What I'm going to do today is try to give you the Cliff Notes version of community engagement. If you want to get deeper into this, please come talk to me after. I could talk about this for hours. But one area that I've really found an expertise in K through 12 in school design is in stakeholder engagement. So before I go, I do want to make sure to touch on the AIA framework for design excellence, because that will be our common thread across all three areas, given that that's such an important piece of how we design and how we communicate with our communities. So you'll notice in each of these, there'll be a little bit of the connection to how it connects to the framework for design excellence up here in that corner. So on prioritizing public interest, what we'll start with, because we've each got about 5 minutes, so again, Cliff Notes version. First and foremost, what we're going to do is establish an understanding of the team. We'll get into what each of those are in the next. We'll establish context, who it is we're talking to, what the stakeholders look like, sound like, and how we, as sometimes transplants to the community, are going to best interpret their data in a way that feels genuine and true to the community we're serving. Then engage the community. You saw the number of research that's done before we even mobilize, before we get into step one. And then how are we staying accountable and upholding intent and building trust in systems where sometimes trust is no longer given or has been lost by the development. So first and foremost, we'll start with understanding the team. We've got a what, who, why, and how. So what are we doing when we say understand the team? We are defining relationships, mapping out community needs and the shared perspectives, and determining what the shared vision is. This is typically when you are working with, for me, I would work with the district level team to first get an understanding of what are we mobilizing to all be on the same team before we go forward in the community. Who is involved in this? The practitioners, the direct stakeholders, your community leaders, your target community members, and relevant experts. We've got a case study at the end that'll show you how we did this for a project in Colorado Springs. Why? I mean, I think we can all guess why. First and foremost, the community buy-in. You want to establish that relationship of trust. That's going to be the ongoing thread across all four of these strategies. And define that common future that's aspirational, inclusive, and actionable. How are we going to do this? The informal conversations and interviews are so valid, but then remember, when you're having these informal conversations, how are you translating that into a real tangible aspect in the future? That's something we'll want to stay accountable with in the next steps. Ethnographic research, surveys, open houses, attending those local events and community groups. So many times what we get wrong in community engagement is that we expect people to come to us, even with food, even at the right time. What's needed in engagement, especially when you're going to a community that may have distrust already, is going where the people are. You cannot expect them to come to you. So in schools, that is being in the staff meetings. That's being in the student pep rallies. I can't tell you how often I've shown a school at a freshman pep rally. It is a great time. I don't think I've ever met a hyper group. So next, we're going to establish context. So in that phase, we're going to start to establish project expectations, benchmarks, and commitments. Understand what these cultural practices are based on the informal interviews that we've carried before, what the socioeconomic climate is, and the history. Again, so many of us go from a metropolitan area, from a rural area, and are practicing in a state or in a different region that we do not have lived experience in. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to engage the community, to build a structure that's trusted. Why are we doing this? We're establishing an understanding of the local environments, observing social dynamics, and assessing various influences. Who's involved here? You're going to see the same groups, the direct stakeholders, practitioners, community leaders, and target community members. How is established context built? Well, that could look like citizen panels, site visits and observations, community mapping, and community delegators. You're building your champions before you get out and really start to engage and inform the community. Then, step 3, what are you doing when I say engage community? Because it sounds like we've engaged them in small aspects in the past too. But what we're doing here now is looking at the community at large, no longer just limiting it to the direct stakeholders or to the community leaders, but we've got this broader group that can give us insights that maybe we found blind spots in the last groups. So why are we doing this? We're establishing an understanding of the local environment. We're going to listen to those collective interests and aspirations and again continue to build trust. So how does this actually happen? That's user experience mapping. This is when you get into the design charrettes, you're showing multiple options of what you have developed thus far. Of course, not in Community Engagement Session 1. I cannot emphasize it enough. Do not present a pre-designed building to a community. They will freak out. Learn and experience. Visioning workshops, hand-on building workshops, and cultural assessment tools. Now, what I'm mentioning here, I do not want you to think this is only for the principals or the senior leaders in the group. If you have emerging professionals on your staff, if you have student interns, bring them to this experience. This is actually what my experience was almost 10 years ago when I first came in, was designing a new high school, and my principal said, you need to be with us in the community meetings. And it changed the trajectory of my career to not only think about architecture, but architecture ingrained in the community. So don't forget your people. And then, of course, we've gone through this. Now we're going to talk about how we uphold intent. What are we doing? This is where we are communicating project goals in timely fashion. So you are following up after those community meetings. You're following up during groundbreakings, during ribbon cutting, and of course during the construction itself. You're holding your team and your target community accountable. You're learning from the project and ensuring that the design aligns with the community aspirations. This is where I'd tell you you've established your broad project goals and maybe your project keystone milestones, and you're bringing this back into the project time and time again, where you're quoting people's words in a design aspect. How does this happen? Citizen juries, community delegators, you're going to see the same elements here. Decision platforms and consensus building. So I'm almost at my last slide. I do want to, again, I could get into this quite a bit, but there is a depth of community engagement that comes into this as well. So when we're talking about those 4, there are 5 different elements that you can look at. First is inform, consult, involve, collaborate, and empower. And you can see each has a different measure of expectation from the community and expectation from your group as well. But the goal of it is to provide the community with balanced and objective information and assist the community in understanding these problems. Essentially, what you're promising to the public in this element is we will inform you of key decisions and milestones. Okay. Do you want me to go to the, awesome. So, community, there are 3 aspects I want you to look at that are just some questions for you to consider. Number 1, in location. How might the surrounding community be impacted directly or indirectly by this project? Are there opportunities to uplift the community in this project? This is if you are at the early on stage. Let's say you just want a new group, you just want a new project, or there's an RFP coming out and they're asking how are you going to engage the community? Well, these are questions you might want to answer as you're bringing that into your proposal. Environmental outlook. What environmental impacts will this have on the community? So I'm really excited for y'all to hear Amanda, because she can start to develop the resiliency commentary here. And then current events. How might current events affect or compromise the work on this project? Can they be mitigated through discussion and or compromise? I'm going to walk you through a case study that we had at Palmer High School. So this is in downtown Colorado Springs, which is a community I was not a part of before I was brought into the community. This is a 100-year-old high school that has seen development since 1886. There was a new building that was built in 1939, and that essentially is the framework of the context we're in. This is a district that had 4 failed bonds back to back to back. There was an academic support plan and a bond that was passed, or a CIP, so basically a certificate of participation, a COP, that allowed for the district to take this project out on credit, which is a really big deal, especially I know Texas bond systems are completely different from Colorado, so that was part of my learning piece in this. But this also had a community that had quite a bit of distrust in saying, well, my kids went to school here, my grandparents went here, my great-great-grandparents went to school here, and there starts to become a, well, how are you going to continue this legacy in all the way through? So we knew as a team the first element that we had to do was come in with no pre-thought out ideas for what the design is, other than establishing a town hall. So we did a number of presentations. We had 6 board presentations, 6 public meetings, dozens of focus groups, alumni meetings, and committee sessions. We had over 12 meetings formally, whether that be town halls or presentations. And yes, we did work, so Perkins Eastman is an international firm. I am one of the K-12 leaders in the Southern market. Then we had RTA Architects, who was our local architect, who is a mile away from this school. When we go visit, we go walk together. And then there was a community engagement specialist team, which was NES. So we really stacked the deck on this, okay? It was about building a community engagement team. There was a specialized number in the fee, too, that came with community engagement. That's something that I really want to encourage you all to look for in your proposals. And what did that turn into? That was over 2,200 participants came to this goal. To give you an idea of the scale, it is a 1,200 student international baccalaureate high school. 1,200 students and almost double that in public engagement participants. The community was ready to be mobilized, and we had to come with an answer for them. There were over 40,000 informational touch points that came via email, mail, newsletters, and the website. And there were over 400 individual staff and student engagement points, and that to me is what I'm the most proud of, is the ability to sit with the students and the faculty multiple times over the course of a year. Now we are moving into design development, and we do have community members who have been mobilized. They've been a part of the groundbreaking and will now be a part of our construction administration phase of how the students will continue to be involved. So if you have any more questions, please let me know. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Amanda for climate.
Thanks, Gabby. Can you all hear me? Great. So hi, everyone. Amanda Barton. I am one of the co-authors to the Resilience Design Toolkit. And when Arlenne asked me to join, she said, can you share this? Because we don't share it enough. HKS worked on this, and we co-published it with AIA. Usually this is an hour to 2 hour long presentation that we can give about how to fundamentally incorporate the toolkit into the design process, but I'm going to shorten it down to 10 or less minutes. So without that, you can download the toolkit on AIA website, as well as there is an AIAU course about it that goes page by page pretty much on how to incorporate this resource for your firm. So resilience is often categorized with sustainability. So it's usually used interchangeably quite a bit. But the approach and the outcome is slightly different. While both sustainability and resilient concepts are future focused and can benefit the design, sustainability focuses on resource efficiency and environmental protection, while resilience focuses towards preparing for and recovering for future disruptions. So here you can see sustainable design follows an additive model, right, where I can have 1 to 100 different types of design elements incorporated into a project, but I can also remove them easily without it affecting the design. So for example, I can put in solar panels but on a project, but then I don't need to do gray water irrigation to have a more sustainable building. So while resilience follows what we're calling a weak link model. This means systems and design solutions work together to create the holistic approach, and system integrity is dependent on all components. So if I have, so the building is only as strong as its weakest link. So if I have storage for food and water and backup power, but I don't have a fire suppressant, or something that really controls the structure for a storm, then my project isn't resilient. So you can see how the different outcomes kind of handle each other. So not all resilient strategies are sustainable, and vice versa. So sustainable strategies are not always resilient. But when these strategies overlap, we really have the high performance project that we all kind of hope to produce in all of our work. And you can see here how those overlaps really create independence for energy and water infrastructure, and it can really go into creating communities and having less environmental threats and impacts to your projects. So here, there are plenty of tools out there, but after evaluation of a lot of them, and these aren't covering everything, you can see that we kind of then focus, how do we take all of these programs and rating systems and integrate it into the architecture design process? So we created our own, so we'll be getting into that a little bit. Many popular green building certifications now have resilient design-based credits that every team can use, and there's also dedicated resilient rating systems that project teams can use. Ours isn't a rating system, it's really how to incorporate it within your own process of designing a project. There's also tools in here with AutoCase and FEMA for benefit cost analysis that you can use. These are both public and subscribed programs. And so through this, after looking through everything and really kind of hyper-focused on what we needed to see within our industry, we developed the 5 forms of resilience to communicate a comprehensive approach for resilience thinking. And together with these 5 concepts of health, social, infrastructure, and environmental and economic resilience, they provide a framework to assess the level of resilience of a place and reveal potential gaps where attention is needed. So this is the beginning of the toolkit. It's a 5-step method that embraces our standard approach for the architecture projects in our AEC industry. And this allows everybody to have a flexible and agile way to accommodate their projects into it. So we're not creating a new system. We're not changing the flow of our traditional pre-concept SDDD construction. We're really trying to show how we can still work on the same projects, but incorporate resilient design into this process. So step 1 in the process is defining the scope. This can be through an RFP and RFQ, or it might stem from a conversation and meetings with clients and stakeholders. And really, when you start having these communications, you start seeing the knowledge level of your client or of the public of where we're at to see how far we can go and pushing the agenda of resiliency. And we all know that that's really important, especially in our state. A lot of the times, it's just written in a little word, resilience. And you're like, what am I supposed to do with that? So that's where those communications start really coming about, and you can then decide how far you want to go and determine, how we can continue as a team. So once the resilience design scope is defined, then we go into our step 2, which is really becoming how to take your team or create a team and then determine how to create deliverables and incorporate the typical work into a work plan and job cost. And I'm going through step by step, so it's not as fun as community engagement, so I'm sorry about that, but it is really important to see how we can then integrate all of these different elements, whether it's community, resilience, and technology, into all three of these topics into our projects. And after the team has been assembled, we then have to really focus on how we're going to incorporate these in meetings and goals into the framework of our traditional design process. So really seeing how we can incorporate certain meetings and to achieve these alignments that we're creating during our process and conversations with the client. Step 3 is all about identifying the hazards pertinent to the site. So this is getting a little bit more technical and more focused on the research of the actual state that we're in. And the key component is determining risk and vulnerability to the exposure. And we use the probability of hazards occurring and the magnitude of losses from those hazards to calculate the risk. I know that's a lot. We have a lot more information and detail about every little piece in the toolkit, but really just understanding that not every event will affect your project to certain degrees, and we'll be getting into that when it comes to the benefit cost analysis and deciding whether or not you really need to achieve resilient design, you need to do every single aspect that you might be thinking of. So once a hazard has been identified as a potential threat to the project, we analyze it to determine the critical impact. So that's what I'm speaking of. If we have an earthquake, then we start looking at the primary impacts and the secondary impacts and deciding how does that affect our project in the location that we're at. Step 4 is where these hazard assessments that we just looked at in step 3 come in, and we really connect them to design strategies. So this is where we're taking in consideration what Gabby mentioned of the AI framework of design excellence into the design process to really discuss and incorporate different concepts from the 10 measures. And approaching holistic and comprehensive ideas for this, you really need to look at these 7 topics to consider. So similar to what I was mentioning before as the weak link, making sure that your project is as highly effective as the weakest link in your design, but as well as time, how long does it take you to accomplish this, as well as what will it, how often the storm will occur, and then similar to policies and operations, depending on if the client can further this and continue operating it how you've envisioned it. So similar to what Upali mentioned in our keynote earlier, where it's really focused in what happens after we as architects finish. And through this, we go through this feedback loop, which is, we call the design integration feedback loop, which is choosing by advantages. Well, it's really, sorry, picking a design strategy, then looking at the benefit cost analysis, which is a large mathematical, complicated Excel spreadsheet that you can download from FEMA if you're interested, and then choosing by advantage. So saying, okay, is this worth how much it's going to cost, and vice versa. So here, based off of those 5, these are I'm sorry, I'm on maternity leave and working on very little sleep right now. So these are the 5 steps for the benefit cost analysis, which evaluates the benefit of the solution with the cost to implement the solution. So we've already done the first 4 steps, and now it's now we just calculate the cost to see, okay, if it's above 1, and that's what I'm talking about, that large mathematical equation that Excel is great at telling us, which you can see more about in the actual toolkit. If the cost benefit is above 1, it's an effective solution, and it makes sense to look into it further into your project as you move through the design steps with your client. But if it's under 1, then it's something to discuss. Is it worth it to continue? You know, we want to make our projects as highly efficient as we can, but not everything makes sense for every project. So you can always save it for the next one. So there isn't any correct way to design a resilient project, and there are ways to design and take your teams to do all sorts of different ways. I'm just showing an example here of one of our projects for a hotel where we've started studying all these different methods based off of the AI framework of design excellence to really incorporate how we can really push the method when it comes to each of the different kind of sections. So if I'm looking, change is the most convenient thing to think of for resilience, right? Change is equal to resilient and adaptation, but we also need to look at resources, whether it's, we're gonna build a concrete building because we're in a storm-prone area, or if we're elevating our MEP to be protected from flood. But then there's also, how do we focus on, incorporating bioswales if we're in a water-prone area, and things of that nature. So it really gives you this opportunity to kind of get a broader view of what you can incorporate for a resilience design. And while this is up on the slide, there is the last step, which in the toolkit is just text, but it's probably one of the most important portions of it, which is the what happens after. You've finished your building, you've let it go, it's with the client, and now you're saying, okay, it's done. But the real important thing is actually coming back to your client and talking to them and making sure that everything is okay. If there's a storm, how did everything react to the storm? Did it manage to survive? Or, you can reassess how you're looking into everything, as well as, just making sure being a person and connecting with them and making sure everything's all right. And hopefully that then leads to more projects, as well as protecting the community that this building is supporting. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Mel to talk about technology.
Okay, guys. Hope everyone's feeling okay. This is the last segment before we go back into another activity. So I'm going to talk about technology from two different perspectives. One is advancing yourself, but the secondary is advancing the profession. I just want to give a mini anecdote. In my life, technology has kind of been my crutch to help me push myself further with the lack of knowledge that I started originally coming into the profession with, because you go to university, you don't learn anything until you get out. You learn how to design. I'm not trying to shade nobody. You learn how to design, but you don't really learn how to construct. And so for those of us that are coming into the profession trying to work with geniuses, technology is our best friend. We are partially cyborgs. Let's be these cyborgs. But then secondarily, we need to be aware that while it's good and fun to learn all these new tech things and do all this cool forward-thinking stuff, we must also be aware that lawyers are always looking down our shoulders, but also that we need to make money at the end of the day because we're a business. So we got to make sure what we're doing isn't just technology for technology's sake, but is actually bringing efficiencies to the profession. So first, advancing. We're going to talk about advancing yourself. One of the key things to advancing yourself is mentorship. So a lot of times we look at mentorship and we're always looking inward to our firm. That's good too, and I'm saying mentorship in both directions. If you're like, I've been working for 10 million years and I don't need mentorship no more, yes you do. Talk to your interns or the people that are around you. You see them doing weird stuff in Revit, talk to them, learn from them. And so also, forums are your friends, as you see. There are my go-to for a lot of the things that I don't know, and I can give you an example. I'm currently on a project working with cyclotrons, and I was like, I don't know what that is. Reddit was my go-to, and I rolled up and I said, what do y'all know? And mind you, a random person that worked on cyclotrons hit me up. And to be fair, they didn't give me the information I needed, but they were able to get me to GE specialists that got me to a point of knowledge that helped me be proficient on this project. And so that's why I put Reddit up here, and McNeil forums. I know a lot of y'all use Rhino. McNeil forums is your best friend. If you're trying to do anything complicated or weird in Rhino, they'll help you out. Also, you want to start to utilize some of your software that we all know how to use, Teams, OneNote, Bluebeam, to streamline internal Q&A. And I'm saying this as a company-wide system, but also as an individual, because usually you're going to start having people come with the same questions. Trust me, I've worked in IT in my previous firm, and every 5 minutes someone would ask me the same question in Revit, and I'd be like, I just told this other person the same question. So if you start to build community around questions that you're noticing happen over and over and over again in your firm, you start to build that intelligence. Everyone is starting to rise. And I'm talking about all those people that are like, I've been working for 10 million years. Yeah, I'm calling you out. Learn with your employees. So once you start to kind of streamline your busy work, you free up more time to learn new software. So there's actually like a balance here. You want to free up the work that you're doing. You want to make sure that you bring a sense of efficiency to the work you're currently doing. And that doesn't necessarily look like AI or any of that stuff. That's something as simple as doing templates. If you do meeting minutes and you know that meeting minutes takes you 10,000 years after you've done your meeting minutes, after the meeting, make a template so that you have your agenda and you give the agenda to whoever's doing the meeting minutes. So during the meeting, they can get that done. So they're just working through the meeting minutes during the meeting. So try to build those efficiencies. And then focus on making your current process more efficient. You can use ChatGPT. You can use an internal chatbot, which is a space a lot more companies are going to, because I know there's the legalese with ChatGPT, with, what is the other big one? What's the big one? Midjourney, that's the one. I haven't used Midjourney in a while because the law has come for me. But we don't want to use Midjourney. But there are internal chatbots that are built into a lot of the softwares you already use. Hit up your manufacturers, see what internal communications you can utilize in your firm. Zoom has AI meeting notes. See how that can help you streamline meeting minutes. Microsoft has a lot of, they have AI in Word that you can utilize, as well as Miro. So if you're someone that does community meetings, as you've heard, and you get thousands of replies, you can utilize Miro to summarize all that information. Mind you, you'll still have to review it, so it's not getting rid of your work, it's streamlining your work. As well as Ignite is another software. If you have it's a data bank that if you put all your information into Ignite, you can start to research through your work. Definitely feel free to ask me questions if you want to learn more about these softwares, but like everyone has mentioned, time is of the essence. So the second thing I want to bring up, though, is invest in your team's technical expertise. Like, pay attention. Is that my time up? Okay, so pay attention to, sorry, I'm trying to make sure I stay within the time frame. Pay attention to where you feel you can push your company and your business and your productivity. If you're noticing that a lot of time is being wasted on administrative stuff, then start to look at how you can build that expertise and not have that much time. So pay attention to where your time is being wasted. And there are a lot of spaces, and when I say building your technical expertise, I'm talking about actually learning, not doing a lunch and learn. Lunch and learns are great and all, but they're just like a little taste to a palate. Actually investing in like LinkedIn Learning. It's a series of courses you can take. It's not too expensive, or formal classes. A lot of local areas are willing to do some for free. I know in the Pittsburgh area, I know I'm not from Florida, just so y'all know. In the Pittsburgh area, we have the Craftsman's Guild with, we have our carpentry class where you can learn carpentry, you can learn welding, and that can help a lot of beginning architects understand how do buildings actually come together, because seeing it is different than drawing it on paper. So once you've kind of built yourself up, you're getting a good understanding of your workflow, you're starting to optimize. The secondary part of this is looking at how you can evolve it into the profession. This is just like a quick little image I have here from Smith Group, because we have our internal climate impact group, and they actually analyze our work to make sure that we're staying up and at the forefront of climate sustainability and resiliency. But the reason why I bring this up is that if you don't have the money to invest in this, the time, gauge that with a consultant, because you can push your work further, you can get those clients, and you can do that if you look at the price point, and it might be worth it to invest in a consultant. I'm going to talk through a couple things you can do on your own if you don't have that kind of money, because I did come from a lower budget firm before I transitioned, but always try to invest if you can, to have that internal expertise, because if you're doing enough of the same projects, for example, in my market, we're doing science and technology, so of course, sustainability, resiliency is at the forefront of a lot of these projects. We have to have an internal team, but if you're like, that's not for your budget, there are ways you can do that. I would say partner with an external agency. I'm giving you examples from Pittsburgh again. I should have definitely looked up more Florida stuff, but there are places in Florida, I'll tell you. But if you're ever in Pittsburgh, we have two companies. We have Evolve EA, they're a climate resiliency consultant company, and we have ROS, who's also a passive house consultant. And I recommend consultants, because if you don't know it, just instead of wasting the time having someone do a half-assed job at it, hire a consultant and put it in the budget. And more often than not, you might find that your project is more like equitable for your business than using your own personal manpower. So, tools to consider if you do not have said manpower and you're just like, you're trying to do the best that you can with whoever the employees you have. Forma is a tool that you can plug into Revit, you can utilize that. EC3, if you're looking into, Forma is something that was used to make these graphics, so if you're someone that's more of a graphic person, you can use that. EC3 is a little bit more spreadsheet-esque, but if you're looking into carbon energy and utilizing what the use is in a project, and you have a bit of time and you have an intern that's willing to do the work, that's the program that you can use. Tally is a little nicer because it's just a plug-in. You just do your Revit modeling. When you do your Revit modeling, just put in the material properties for the materials you're making, so you just have to make your Revit materials, and then it throws out the information. Mind you, all of these tools, you still need to do your own personal vetting, so you can't just do it and it works. You gotta make sure you know what you're looking at and what you're analyzing. Cove tool is another one. There's Ladybug, there's Honeybee. Definitely come talk to me if you have any questions about what are some softwares to utilize and where your situation is, because there is a software for every situation. So, Going forward into the profession, I want to talk a little bit about construction, because I feel like a lot of times when we talk about technology, it's always in just representation, imagery, flashy, which is fun. I'm not going to lie, it's the fun part. But know that there are some softwares, all of which are, I would say, $200 or less a month. So it's cheapest from the top to most expensive on the bottom. So Revit, you know, is not cheap. So I'm not going to say that's cheap. But Autodesk Recap, you can get that for like $200 a month. Anyway, Follogram is what you're seeing in the image next door. And so this is a AR script that you can utilize just with your Rhino modeling. You can just take a model straight from Revit, put it into Rhino, and then you have that model if you're like more of a Revit modeling company. And then you can actually have it lay out so that construction workers can utilize that model to build the work. And so in my previous firm, we actually utilized this to make complex brickwork, and it helped the bricklayers understand how to lay the bricks out in a way that was less expensive than if we had to hire a super intensely genius bricklayer, which we'd have money for. Another thing, if any of your firms are into restoration work, existing work, and you're trying to streamline that process, Polycam is a great software to utilize, because that is a software that you can scan a building with, and it will throw out a plan. To be fair, it's a little crude, but it's cheap. It's less than $100 a year, I think. I think it's like $99. They might have upped the price to like $125 a year. So it's pretty cheap for what it does. And you can scan an entire space of this size, and you can have that space to reference. For example, in my previous firm as well, we utilized that software, myself included, utilized that software a lot, because I was working on smaller project, and usually it was like me and one other person on the team, and my company didn't want to give me the money to do something more crazy. So I would utilize the software, scan it, and then I would always have something to reference, because not only does it give you a floor plan, it gives you a 3D model that you can, and gives you a point cloud that you can use in your work. So you have something to reference, and also a video, gives you a video. And it's relatively cheap. I use my own funds to use that program. And the Autodesk Recap is just something that you'll utilize with Polycam, and what Autodesk Recap can do is it can actually give you a fully functional DWG model. Because a lot of times you're getting these point clouds, and you're like, I don't want to waste the time to model over the point cloud to get the finished product. And so Recap will just give you the actual model. And then last but not least, Revit. We all use Revit. Everyone knows how to use Revit. You've got an intern in your company that's maxing out the Revit brain that you're probably not utilizing. Use them. Maximize your Revit capacities, because Revit has so much capability in the construction and the built world to streamline your process. The more templates you can make in Revit, the more you can utilize Dynamo and Revit, the easier your life is going to be. If you do a lot of schools, utilize Revit to make some of the basic details that don't change, and just have those templates set up for you. It is I feel like a lot of times people talk about technology, how do they go forward, how are they not left behind, and there's so many easy things you can do with the technology you're currently using. And it's like, if you don't have that expertise, it's fine. Find those interns, maximize their brain, because to be fair, they might know this software, but they're not thinking about construction. So what combined powers, brains will elevate. And so that's my last slide. Thank you.
So we'd like to open it up for questions for the floor, and we have one quick activity at the end. It will be less intensive than the first one, I promise. But I do have one opening question, and this is for all of you. What do you do when you're broke? What if you can't afford to buy the software? And Mel just touched on that. What if you don't have the manpower and the resources to implement, climate strategies? What if you can't just set somebody to the community to do the engagements? How do we overcome that?
Yeah, so I'll start. I think a lot of people don't see community engagement as really a scalable tool. So this is something where you can go as intense as a consultant, and as small as starting with a survey and starting with mailers. There are other industries that do this so well, but where I really want to position architects, I know I'm talking to the right people in the room, you are the trusted advisors of your clients and communities. And if you can show them the return on investment for community engagement, which means we won't lose 4 weeks at DD because we had to go back because we had a bad article come out about the school that someone's already designed it and no one asked us to be a part of it. When you can start to showcase that to a client as the importance of, well, we'll start with meetings. Maybe we find efficiencies in the design process or in the construction administration process to invest the time into community engagement. I'm not saying that it's anything that would require an additional fee to continue going after community engagement. Do it, definitely advocate for it, but if there's a place where you talk about scalability and you can cut things, I'd encourage you don't cut it out of community engagement. It's really something that has a long-term impact.
And I think when it comes to resilient, and I'll incorporate sustainability in there, but when it comes to incorporating these design measures into a project, really it's not creating them as a separate bucket. It's incorporating them so heavily into the design, there's no way you can look at the design without them. I'm working on a project right now where it's heavily incorporated louvers into the design focus, and we've studied it using Mel's technology, and we've embraced, okay, certain sides of the building incorporate louvers in different methodology. So they're angled differently, they're shaped differently. But our client said, well, what if I can't afford it? Or what about all the birds that are gonna sit on the louvers? And we said, okay, we'll show you what it looks like when we remove them. And they said, we showed them a rendering, and they quickly said, put them back on, put them back on. We can't do that. And it made such a difference because it was so enveloped into the design solution and the story of the project that there was no way that the client could see it without it, and it just made it so that we ended up focusing on it more so than before. So I would say, don't look at them, like I said, as a separate entity, but really study it and incorporate it as best you can into the soul of the design rather than as an additive.
On the technology side, I will say there is a cheap version of whatever you're trying to do out there. If you're not willing to spend money on Rhino, there's Blender. If you're not willing to spend money on Rhino, I mean, Revit, I don't really know an alternative to that, and I'm sorry. You're just gonna have to either foot the bill or just get really good at drawing. So that's all I can say about that. But I can say, for example, one of the softwares, Polycam, like that was just something where I was like, we don't have money to travel to a client. They're like 2 hours away from us. So we're like, we're gonna go review the site and that's it. We got one shot to review the site. And as architects, that's crazy to go on site once and then that's it. We had like maybe one other time we were allowed to go when we started showing the owner samples. So we're like, when we go, we need to make sure we have a documentation of this site. And so I spent the night researching, like, how can I do a documentation of this site in a way that's cost effective? I know I cannot afford a 3D scanning machine that scans a whole building. We've got money like that. So $100, found Polycam, utilized it. All you need is an iPad. If any of you guys have an iPhone with the four dots on it, you already have a LiDAR scanner on your phone, so you have the equipment. Went on site, scan, and we utilized that throughout the entire project. And we were within an inch of accuracy when we actually came on site to build, so.
Who had a question?
Oh, you were saying what? Polycam. Polycam. Yeah, it's just like a hobbyist software. It's funny, there are a lot of hobbyist softwares that are like adjacent to architecture that can do so much. It's for 3D printing, honestly.
Anybody have a question in the audience? Oh, there's one over.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. So my question as regards to sustainability and resiliency, even when you have it built in, once it moves on to the construction side of it, oftentimes, I'm gonna say a bad word, it gets value engineered and a lot of that meat gets taken away. How do you handle that?
So I think it's anything that you find important in your project, you fight for it, and you compromise So for us, really, it's saying, okay, well, can we compromise and I give you this if we really keep this, right? As architects, we're in charge of the built environment and where everybody, live, works, and play. I'll use last year's theme for the conference. But it's really important that we push for the protection of people. It's what an HSW, right? Health, safety, and welfare, making sure that everybody who's using our building is safe. And I think if you spell the story out specifically for resilience in regards to that, it really helps promote clients to look into it a little bit further. Hopefully that answers. I think it's more a talking point rather than changing your design to some extent. There are some methods, that we have to change, and there are, you can go to one extreme and then kind of, work your magic and kind of change it a little bit to reduce costs, but at some point we also, we need to play give and take and compromise, like I said.
I'd actually add something to that too, because sometimes we usually think that the sustainable or resilient option is usually the most expensive, but I have actually worked on projects where it has been the cheapest way to build a building. For example, we had a project where the initial design team that the client dropped because they didn't like their design before they came to us was doing a metal rain screen. And we opted for saying, like, your court, it was a squash court, to be fair, and their courts were wood and very sensitive, and we decided to go with an insulated concrete unit. And that was, mind you, way cheaper than the metal rain screen. It was just, and the time it took off construction minimized the price even further in labor. So sometimes you might actually save money.
Yeah, I think also, focus on passive design strategies as well. Not everything has to be technology focused in the sense of not the program, sorry, not the program, but it doesn't have to be the, biggest and brightest new technology that someone's selling you. We can always look back at what vernacular architecture did. We survived without any of this before. We can do it again with certain extents to our design. I'll use the project I'm actually doing right now with the louvers, but we designed with we raised the building up, hold on, I'm converting. We raised it up 4 feet from sea level, and we then decided the project then went through a storm, and we actually then decided to raise it up another 2 feet to make sure, and this was during construction. So while everybody's pouring slabs and getting our piles ready, we are changing the design and saying, we want to make it more effective and make sure that this project stays with the community longer than what we had envisioned before. And, sometimes we do have to say, oh, we miscalculated, and we have to keep going back. And luckily, our client was forgiving, and they said, let's do it. Let's raise this building. And I think it's important that the communication is there with your client and making sure that you do that give and take.
Anyone else? Yes, please.
Can everyone hear me? Cool. So I'm just trying to engender conversation here. Every one of you has talked about projects, but but everyone always tells me I am. Every one of you has talked about a project that's either institutional or commercial in scale. But often an issue we have at these conferences that comes up in conversation is that kind of hard line between the small and residential and when you reach a certain critical mass. So I'm interested in, from the three of you, how would you scale down your approach to those smaller projects that often have to skimp on these kind of things?
All right, I got you on this. So so my career started with little projects. I was always the one put on the broke project because there was less risk if I were to mess up as a newer designer, but also didn't have the manpower to put more people on it with me. And so I can tell you right now, that is what led to me maximizing my use of software. And all of the softwares I put up there, very cheap, very affordable, and helped streamline a lot of the work so that we could do something more interesting and complex. For example, the squash court facility I was telling you about called Steel City Squash is in Pittsburgh. That court, we utilize Cove Tool and EC3 to understand how we could maximize the sustainability design in that project. And so we actually set it up so that it's an electrical building, because the way we built it made it so that they actually cut their use of electricity by almost, I think they're a fifth of what they used to expense in their previous project. And their previous project was like an old pit building. So we were actually able to do a lot, and the scale of that project is like this room. It was not crazy. And in previous work I've done, I've worked in residential mixed-use developments where it's like 5 units and then like a mixed use underneath it, where it's business that they haven't even decided yet after it's been built, and they're figuring it out all along the way. And a lot of the processes to do that, technology, we utilize technology. But also being smart. You guys are intelligent, very intelligent people, and a lot of times we have like go-tos with architectural details, but if you play around with a detail that's basic AF, you can find some crazy design ideas that are cost-effective but beautiful.
I'm going to also add just really quickly, but going back to passive design and really looking at what we used to do and making sure that we're designing for the environment that we're building in is truly important for making both a sustainable project, a resilient project, and hopefully an economically pleasing project for communities and the client. I do mainly hospitality work, but I will say that while you envision large-scale high-rise buildings, we also do small, repeated little homes for people. And I'm saying little, they're not these massive mansions that other people start envisioning, but it's really important to bring in technology to start researching how you can shift your building by 2 degrees to make sure that the daylighting is proper, or adding one more operable window here to effectively, help with mitigating other elements or giving daylighting to a specific area for the project. So there are important elements when it comes to technology and your smaller projects and laying them out in their most effective, highly performance spaces.
Yeah, and Bryce, I'm going to stay in my institutional lane, but on a much smaller budget. So we're developing a relationship with a new client and working on projects that are under $1 million, so in the 800,000 range. It is a pre-K addition to a facility, or splitting a wall in the pre-K. But we're still asking the same questions we would a larger community to the user group that's moving into that space. So I'm not investing 180 hours into that in my project schedule, but I am investing the 8 to 20 hours, depending on how many user group and interviews we need to do to talk with the pre-K, to talk with the principal, to talk with the project managers for the school district. So to that scalability aspect, especially being the one who manages the budget or the schedule, it's important to maintain that same thought thread no matter what room you go into.
Any other questions? I have a question. So as I've developed in my practice, I'm personally focusing more on operations, and I'm less in, let's call it the weeds of doing that, the day-to-day tasks, and I'm tasked more with looking holistically at how my team performs and how they perform and getting the right key players in place. So how do I get myself up to date on some of these things that we talked about? Because maybe I'm just, not experiencing that on a day-to-day. So how do I know what is the latest and greatest technology? How do I know, what are some of the, even the framework components that we talked about that I can leverage in a way, and I, try to identify who is the right personnel on the team to tackle those things?
All right, so I'll do a little plug. A lot of times our experts in community engagement are not architects. So they're going to be those school district members, they're going to be your public policy specialists, your city of Austin, city of Tampa's, who know and understand what that framework is. I can encourage you more to check out the League of Cities. They do talk very often on community engagement practices at a different scale, right? You're talking about community engagement and disbursement with a community on a policy, well, you can take that same framework and apply it to the built environment. So don't be afraid. Yes, we're in an insular space right now, but you all are part of your public commissions, you're part of your city boards and your city councils. Step into those rooms with this framework and bring it back to your teams. As far as who to bring into the room, when you start the conversation, you all as the mentors and leaders in your firm, bring your emerging professionals with you. I mentioned that earlier, that I can't emphasize it enough, because you are influencing their AXP, their experience, in how they're going to view the profession as a whole. And if they see it as insular and where architects only talk to architects, we're doing ourselves a disservice 50 years from now.
I think also for, getting in, or not being in the weeds, but learning from others, I think it was mentioned to bring in consultants. I think, Gabby, you mentioned that. Learning from others is so important. We can learn so much from people outside of our industry. I always go to the original, one of the examples my husband gave me, which was he's an attorney, but he took theater classes so that he could learn how to public speak. He didn't learn from another attorney. He learned from actors. And I think it's something that we also have to embrace, where we don't have to know everything, and we can really kind of look outside to then learn inside.
I'll second that. Make a friend with someone who's in tech. Most of the softwares that I've utilized, I've actually gotten recommended to me by graphic designers or product designers or UI designers as well. So not a lot of them have come from other architects. Like Polycam was just me and a bunch of my D&D friends that are making minis. And then I was like, we could use this for a building. And it's stuff like that that's kind of progressed. But if you don't have friends outside of architecture, which is understandable considering the cult that architecture is, there is a conference, Acadia, that does look at futuristic software and how it can be applied to architecture. You will have to kind of stretch your imagination to see how it could be applied more practically, because they are looking at a more university level. But I recommend, if you have the budget or someone that lives nearby, to try to sneak in, go for a day and see the technology that they present there, because a lot of, Hologram was one of the softwares that was presented there. There was actually an activity where they made a sculpture utilizing Hologram. So that's also another, and I guess the third, I would say, this is actually one for the community. Y'all live in the neighborhoods. You live in neighborhoods. Every one of you, unless you're rich enough to live on, Bezos money, you live in the middle of nowhere. You all live in neighborhoods. Go to your local communities. You'll be surprised how much random work you got. I actually just got a project for my current firm on a riverfront because I talked to my neighbor. So you guys are architects, talk to your local neighbors. And then what's ideal is if you get a project in your community that you actually live in, and you're just kind of I am the expert of this community because I lived here for 20 years.
I think that just shows that it all goes back to communication, back to where our initial activity was from.
So we have time for one more question before we move into our activity. Anybody? No? 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 Brave soul in the back.
Y'all can make it. It's in Miami. All of y'all Floridians, get out there.
Thanks for that.
I'm also going to add that there's a resilience conference that focuses on policy that you should attend if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that and how to meet with your policymakers and advocate for the built environment.
Okay, so you don't have to leave just yet if you don't want. You should all have a small piece of paper in your table that has a couple of questions listed out. And what we'd like you to do, and if you don't have one, you can get one from the table next door, and I have some extras up here. Pick a question from those and maybe share some of your insights from your own experiences with those in your table, and maybe get some ideas that you can take away with you. Encourage you to connect with each other. And we would love for you to, do you have a piece of paper? You don't have a piece? Okay. Yeah, we would love for you to just maybe share some thoughts about your own experiences, and you don't have to necessarily only talk about the topic that's on your table. If you care more about a different topic, that's okay too. Well, I want to thank you all for coming. We are actually at time, but want to encourage you to continue these conversations with people you meet throughout the convention. We'll be hanging out for a few minutes, so if you have any questions from anyone here, please feel free to come and say hi. Want to thank Gabby, Mel, and Amanda again for their time today, and all of you for coming. Thank you.